The female lead tells women's stories. Remarkable, diverse, inspiring. An educational charity promoting positive female role models who show the many different routes to success and fulfillment.
So often I hear people saying, oh, how do I get started? How do I do this? How do you do it? You just start. You have to begin. And it won't be perfect and it'll be messy and it'll be hard, but you're doing something and you're on your way.
Empowering future generations of women through films and a book of 60 women donated to 18,000 schools in the UK and USA, reaching millions of young people. And through our female lead societies, we help girls to discover new role models that speak to their passions, ambitions and careers. Through our research into social media and mental health, we found a solution to the negative impact of social media on teen girls. Through a simple intervention which encouraged girls to follow different influencers, we were able to change their entire social media experience and sense of well-being. We called this campaign Disrupt Your Feed, and it reached 20 million people on social, with 330 million impressions all over the globe. So what's next? As well as inspiring girls, we're now finding ways to measurably improve the lives of older women through data, research, and the stories of those who have overcome challenges and found their own personal versions of success. We're a long way from being finished. Join us in our mission.
Are we going to talk about women's rights again? Yes, we're going to talk about it until there's balance.
Hello everyone. Welcome to our Female Lead LinkedIn Live. We have a fantastic session again for you this afternoon. We're going to learn about how to ask for help. Sounds simple. I'm guessing we don't do it very well. So to do that, we have some fabulous guests, some fabulous coaches. But first, just a few words. I'm founder of the Female Lead. My name's Edwina Dunn. This is a charity where we showcase amazing and very diverse women who are shaping the world today. So, as I mentioned, we're joined by two great business managers. I think you met at business management school at university. They are the Squiggly Career Writers. I can't say that word without smiling. Helen Tupper and Sarah Ellis. And they have written this book called The Squiggly Career. I smile again as I say it. And talk about really 5 skills that you need to succeed in work today. I love that it's the two of you, because I've always talked in my leadership about the power of 2. And what I loved when I read your book, which is very good, that you talked about your different strengths, which again is something that speaks to me very powerfully. Helen, you have energy, perspective, and positivity. And you gave the momentum to start writing the book. And then Sarah, you have the creativity, consideration, and commitment to see through to arriving on the desk. So well done, both of you. We're going to have some questions later, but I get you to myself for a while. So I'm going to start straight away and ask a couple of questions. So I think we all hear things like, I don't know where I'm going, I feel stuck, I don't know what I'm good at. And they're kind of all clues to where we start. And I suppose now more than ever, working life, it is a bit more challenging, a bit more difficult. Can you speak right now and how you're finding the kind of questions that you're asked?
Yeah, I think this point about squiggly careers, I think it's really important to say what we're not saying is that means it's all brilliant all of the time. I think with squiggly careers, what we're trying to do is describe the reality of all of our working lives today. That actually there's so much more transition and change than we've perhaps ever experienced, that we can expect to have 4 or 5 different types of career during our working lives. I always tell the story that I've had more jobs and worked in more organisations than my dad. And I'm probably the rule, not the exception now, in terms of if we were all to kind of think about our careers. And so within these squiggly careers, I think at their best, they're full of possibilities. And we heard at the start of our session today, how important it is now, I think, for us all to define our own version of success. So rather than climbing up a ladder, following in other people's footsteps, feeling like there's only kind of one route to success and we all should share the same vision of success, actually careers today are much more personalised. And that's brilliant because that gives us an opportunity to find much more fulfilment and meaning from our work. This year, I think, has been tough. It's been a tough year for all of us in different ways. I think the key thing that we are hearing from people that people are struggling with at the moment is confidence. Now, confidence is not a new topic. It's one of the 5 skills that we included in our book that was written way before 2020 sort of happened to us. But I think this idea of struggling a bit with our career confidence this year, perhaps feeling a bit less resilient than we did. Perhaps you've got plans or things that you were hoping were going to happen that aren't emerging. You were thinking maybe this is the year you were going to work for yourself, start your own business. Maybe you're hoping to get promoted. Maybe you're hoping to manage or lead a team for the first time. And maybe some of those things out of your control, mean that those things kind of haven't happened. And I think this is where we would really encourage you to kind of think about, experimenting and kind of having more than one plan of success. We often talk about worrying less about a career plan. It's so hard to do a career plan now when we don't know what jobs are going to emerge, what careers are going to be around in a couple of years' time, even what skills we might need. The World Economic Forum, in some research they did this year, talk about, by 2022, which is scarily actually not that far away now, around 40% of the skills that we have today probably won't be needed anymore, won't be relevant anymore. So we all need to get used to kind of having this beginner's mindset, this ability to kind of keep learning and growing, and to see our careers, I think, as a continual process of experimentation and curiosity. Helen, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
No, I think I'd echo the point about confidence, just that it can feel quite overwhelming. The amount of things that are happening all at the same time, the amount of change at home, at work, in their career. I think if people aren't getting the help that they might need, that can feel quite overwhelming and quite isolating. And that's why we want to help people to feel confident about getting the help that they need to help them in their career right now.
Because it would be easy to see this year and write it off as a lost year, wouldn't it? But you're not going to recommend that to anybody, that, we just feel like we've lost a whole year. I guess, what you're trying to encourage is that sense of how can we prepare for something that, we don't absolutely know what the future is, but we can skill up during this time. And I think that's why a lot of people who come onto these LinkedIn Lives care so much, because they're trying to prepare for that really changing, uncertain future. So I guess I'm going to ask you 2 questions. I'm going to ask you, is there one skill that matters most? And is asking for help that skill, or is it just one of them?
Okay, maybe I'll go first, so we can see if Sarah and I agree, because we haven't aligned on the one skill. I think that the skill that matters the most is actually understanding what your values are and applying them in your work. So values are what makes you you. They're what motivates and drives you. We all have values, and when you understand what they are and you think about how they show up in the work that you do and you connect them to the work that you do, they become a constant for you in your career. So if you imagine there's lots and lots of change going on, lots of things that we can't control, lots of things that we can't predict. One thing that I have got control of is understanding what matters most to me and thinking about, well, how do I craft my career around those things? So for example, my values: freedom, growth, energy, and achievement. And so even though I might feel that everything's changing, I can look at a single week. So it doesn't have to be the entirety of my career. I can look at a single week and think, okay, well, what's achievement going to look like for me this week? How am I going to grow, or how am I going to help someone else to grow? How do I make sure that I've got the freedom that I need? And it gives me a sense of control back. And so I absolutely do think that getting help's important, because I think when you're starting to look at that, you might need some help. Like I might need to ask Sarah, for example, in order for me to do those things. Could you help me in this way? But I think it starts with knowing what matters most to you and knowing that will be different for all of us, and there's no judgment in it. There's no judgment in what matters most to you, but if you have the awareness and you take the action, you can give yourself a bit more control back.
And I think the thing for me on values, where it's been really kind of transformational for me in my career, because I think it gave me the bravery to make decisions based on what was most important to me versus perhaps what I should do, or what other people were telling me to do, or perhaps what the right thing on paper to do was. So for example, at one point in my career, I decided I wanted to work a 4-day week in one organisation and have 1 day to spend on Amazing If, the business that we now run. And at that time, doing a kind of 5-day week, but 4 days in one job, 1 day in another job, was unheard of. There was no role models. There was nobody else kind of working part-time kind of in that way, so that they could kind of start their side project. The word side project didn't even exist. And so I remember thinking, wow, this feels like a big ask of the organisation. You know, it was something I actually had to take to the board of that organisation, of a FTSE 100 company. But because I knew it would help me to live my values more, it gave me the confidence to ask that question and to ask for the help that I need to make that happen, and to kind of get the right support systems around you. I think when you're aware of your values, you start to take actions that are aligned with those values, and you start to think about, well, what is the support system I need around me that's going to help me live those values even more? And I think that's where you start to get into, okay, asking for help and the help that you need, because nobody has a successful career kind of doing it all by themselves. Even if someone's career looks so shiny on the surface, and there are some incredible women now that we can look to as role models, I promise you, all of those women will have got really good at asking for help, not feeling like they have to do everything themselves, and actually thinking, where are my gaps, or who can I learn from? Who do I want to spend time with who's perhaps different to me? We all, I think, need to learn to ask for help in a way that works for us.
I think you say something really important there, which is asking people who are different to you. Mm. And again, this is something that I feel very strongly about. It's actually a little bit easy to feed ourselves with the same opinions and the same ideas, because it's kind of comfortable. And it's a little more uncomfortable when we hear the other side of a point of view. But this is something you encourage, I take it.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting ideas there. I think it's so easy to fall into the echo chamber trap, as I call it, which is spending time with people a bit like you, who probably share similar perspectives, opinions, perhaps similar backgrounds, whether that's socioeconomic backgrounds, or perhaps you have other things kind of in common. And actually, it's when we spend time with people who come at things differently, with a different perspective, that's when we spot new opportunities. That's when we connect dots in a different way. I was interviewing a philosopher called Roman Krznaric the other week, and one of the things that he recommends is something called like making friends with your enemies. So he describes making friends with your enemies as an empathy experience. So he's not saying you have to agree with your enemies. And by enemies, that sounds dramatic, but that might just be spending time where you just think, oh, I don't really understand that person's perspective. That person feels very different to me. actually how useful that is for both encouraging and building our own empathy. So we kind of really benefit from that. But also then you see things from different people's perspectives. You get a window into lots of different people's worlds. You know, yesterday I was doing a session on creativity, and I was really nervous about this session because I felt really out of my depth. Everybody else, I was surrounded by, you know, a guy next to me who'd been a ballet dancer, somebody else who was a theatre producer, someone who was on the stage doing live ceramics. And I was thinking, I'm not creative enough. It would have been really easy to kind of have imposter syndrome. But the reason I said yes to spending time with those people was I recognised, actually, I'm going to get the opportunity to spend 90 minutes with people who are so different from me, who see the world in different ways, who spot different problems, have got very different experiences. And honestly, it's been the best. That was the best night last night of my lockdown since kind of March or February. And it really reminded me how important it is that we stay intentionally curious, that we don't fall into that trap of, I think particularly working from home, it's so easy to kind of stay connected to the people that we see day to day for our day jobs, to get our tasks done, that you know, we're perhaps not having some of the incidental conversations that we might have had around the office, those kind of serendipitous moments. So I think we've got to work a bit harder now to kind of make that kind of curiosity happen.
So I'm reading Alain de Botton at the moment, his favourite. I mean, you know, his book on work, I think, is just wonderful and really, really interesting. But it's not about me, it's about you. Now, we're going to get some questions soon, and then I have to stop asking questions. But can you just help me? Can you just summarise the steps for asking for help? Because it's really important to our audience that they hear your wisdom as succinctly as you can share in this very short session.
Yeah. Absolutely. So the first thing is, when you're asking for help, be as specific as possible when you're making the request. So when a lot of people might say, reach out and say, oh, it'd be great if you could help me, it's not quite specific enough. We have to let people know what the help is that we need and why we're going to that person, so that they can connect the dots and they can think, yes, I am the right person to help you. So we have to make it easier for people to say yes. So start by being specific. Second thing, don't minimize your request. So a lot of people will start a request with, I'm really sorry to have to ask you this, or I'd love your help and it'll only take just 1 minute. And in doing the request, we sort of diminish the ask, and it makes the person who we're asking feel that the help is somehow less significant and it's a bit smaller. And we don't want that. We shouldn't both diminish ourselves and the request that we're making, because we're important too, but we also shouldn't diminish the value of their time by, oh, it's just a minute, it's just a little request. And then the next thing is, when someone has helped you, it's very important. There are two benefits when people help you. So generally, people like helping people. So first of all, know that if you can be specific and genuine in a request, most people will say yes, because people like helping people. So the first benefit someone gets is when they give you that help. That feels good. I feel like I've done something good. I've helped someone. Fantastic. The actual bigger benefit that somebody gets when they help you is when you go back to them a week or a month later and you let them know how you've put that help into action, how it's made a difference to you. That actually has a bigger benefit. And I think it's one of the biggest things people miss out. They get brave enough to ask for the help, and then they go and have that conversation with that person, and then they say thank you in the moment, and then they sort of move on. And we miss that opportunity to sort of play back the impact of the help. Not only does that make a big impact to the person who gave you the help, it also makes them more likely to help somebody else again in the future. So you sort of end up with much more of a loop where people help people. And that's what we really want to happen, that person helps you, that you go and help someone else, that person goes and helps somebody else. It's much, much better for all of our careers if we can create that kind of career karma that goes on where people start helping people.
And I think, just remember, no one has a monopoly on wisdom. So sometimes I think we perhaps put all of our eggs in one basket, and we've got one person in mind that we'd really like them to help us. And that's absolutely fine. Definitely go to that person. But why wouldn't you ask 5 people? Why wouldn't you ask a couple more people? Because you just increase your chances of success. And in my experience, there's no such thing as too much help. And if people don't respond, Or even if they say no, don't take it personally. That's never about you. That might be because that person, you've caught them at a really bad time. They might have missed it. You never kind of know what's going on in kind of somebody else's world. And often if people do maybe get a rejection or a kind of no response early in being confident enough to ask for help, it can really affect our confidence. So if that does happen, again, if you ask more than one person, then you're kind of reducing that risk. The worst case scenario is you just get even more help. And actually, back to Edwina's point, which was a brilliant one, by asking more people, you also get more perspectives. So you always want to, I always think, one of my longest term mentors is a guy who thinks so differently to me. And to be honest, about 80% of the time, I don't agree with the advice that he gives me, but it really makes me pause for thought. And it really opens up my perspectives. And so I really value the fact he asks me questions that I wouldn't ask myself, that he approaches problems in a way that I wouldn't consider. And that's kind of so valuable.
Well, I love that. And I know, Sarah, you asked me before you wrote the book for me to make a contribution, and I was delighted. And not only that, you said thank you after I had, and it was very easy for me to do, and it made me feel nice as well. I'm proud of your success. How life should be. Listen, I have lots of questions. I was going to ask you about your super strengths and things like that. But before I do, I just want to go to our audience and see some of the questions that they're asking. Okay, Ashley, here we go. Do you have any exercises that have helped you?
Okay, so yeah, absolutely. And to think about and refine values. So often when our values show up or when they're not present, it's when we are at our happiest at work. That's often when they're kind of existing and they're present, or when we might be at our unhappiest or most frustrated, or we feel most kind of disconnected from ourselves at work. Maybe our character doesn't feel like it's really showing up at work. So one of the best things that you can do is you can almost look back to go forward. So start thinking about 3 career highs you've had in the past, and maybe think about 3 career lows. And just get your words down on paper, like what was happening in that moment. Like if I think about one of my career highs, I was launching a business for Virgin, and if I started to think about, well, why was that such a career high? It was because there was such positive energy and there was such a lot of momentum, and it felt like there were some big achievements. And then you do exactly the same for the other highs and exactly the same for the other lows. And then what we want to do is spot the themes. Spot the themes. Can you see consistently when you have felt at your best and at your most energized? Can you see some sort of threads, some commonalities in all of those different moments? And equally, when you haven't felt like yourself at work, you felt like there was something missing, maybe you felt a bit flat, what's consistent there? And what you get to then is you start being able to spot some clues as to what your values might be. It's quite a reflective process, your values, but you can at least start to get an insight into what are some of my must-haves and what are some of my must-nots. And it's a really good starting place just to get curious about what some of those values clues might be.
Lovely question. What if we ask for help and don't get it from our employer? What if they're just not responsive? That must hurt, right?
I think that's a really good question. And I think that's recognizing that, first of all, that does feel hard. That's definitely hard if that kind of happens to you. I also think it's thinking about where else might that help exist. So there are lots of kind of supportive places outside of your kind of day-to-day environment. And so certainly, and I've done this before, I've kind of asked for help based on networks that I've been part of, based on groups that I've volunteered for, based on people I've actually worked for previously. Like I'm still connected to lots of my previous managers and leaders that I've spent time with. And if I wasn't getting help in the kind of here and now, I think I would go outside of my employer and try and think about other spaces and places that are naturally supportive. That could be individuals, and that could also be groups. I think it's worth remembering when we ask for help, we don't always need to ask for help one-to-one. We could also ask for help and kind of go to places where we think, who might also be sharing this problem? Who might also kind of be looking for some solutions? Where could I start to kind of hang out, which might actually also kind of help to give me some support? And sometimes that can be, as you know, a supportive WhatsApp group. That doesn't need to be kind of something more formal. So I think it's definitely hard, and that must kind of really hurt. And you know, I would kind of protect yourself. I think if you're kind of in that place where you feel like you're not getting that support, and then try and go and spend more time with people where people want to help you, because that'll give you that kind of positive lift that you need.
Or change where you work.
I mean, that's probably the next step.
Yeah. Ella asks, how can I get my team to ask for more help?
So if this is about your team collectively, kind of getting the people helping people in the team, the first thing is start to role model it. So if people can't see it happening, it makes it a bit scarier, because actually it can be hard to ask for help. It sometimes feels a bit vulnerable. It sometimes feels like what we call our confidence gremlins come out to play. Because if I'm asking for help, maybe I'm sort of exposing that I don't know everything. I mean, who actually knows everything anyway? So first thing I would say is role model it. And then if you want to do this in a team, there's a really simple exercise you can do where, as a team, you could think about one thing you've got to give and one thing that you'd like to get over the next 12 months. So I might sit in my team and say, oh, one thing that I've got to give is this year I've learned a lot more about storytelling. I've been trying to do that a lot more. I've got to be really good for the business, so I could tell you and teach you some of the ways that I've learned to tell stories. That's one thing I've got to give, if anybody wants it. And one thing that I would like to get some help with is I'd really like a mentor who could help me understand how to talk about data more confidently. I mean, Edwina, you'd probably be amazing for that. And then as a team, what it does is it helps us to get more confident in both talking about what we've got to give and what we'd like to get. And sometimes you get the matches. Sometimes what I say I've got to give happens to be what somebody else wants to get. And that's really positive. But there is a benefit, even if the match doesn't happen in that room, there is a benefit in just increasing the confidence and creating a safe environment for people to share what they've got to give and also what they would like to get.
One of the things I used to do when I was managing director for a smaller company, at the end of every week, I'd ask everybody, hundreds of people, what's one thing that I could do that would help you do your job even better? And I think that was my way of role modeling, just saying that one thing that I could do to help you do your job even better. And I would get so many responses to that. And I think I felt that because I frequently talked about me wanting to help everybody also was then more able and more open to be able to ask me for help when they needed it. So it kind of created an environment where I think we've all got to see asking for help as a strength. It's a sign of strength, and that's got to come from leadership. And yes, it takes vulnerability, but it's not a weakness. It's a brilliant part of our Squiggly Careers that we can all help each other. And that's a really positive thing. And that's a strength, not a weakness.
Diane, does the place time matter when asking your employer for help? And if so, when should you do it? Oh, there's a good one.
You got a perspective, Sarah?
I think I would always start by thinking about the people that you have kind of strong existing relationships with in your organisation. Now, sometimes that's your manager, but that could also be a colleague or a peer, people you trust and who you feel are really supportive. And so I think we don't have to make help something that's formal. I think informal help is brilliant, like everyday help, making help more of a habit rather than this kind of scary thing. And so I think just getting used to, just the people you work with day to day and creating small little rituals like Helen just described, like I just talked about in terms of that question, where help becomes a habit is definitely what I think our ambition should all be. I think if you've got a more formal request for help, so, for example, when I was asking my manager for help because I wanted to work in a different way, then thinking about when you ask for help, don't expect all of the answers in the here and now. So if someone's hearing that from you for the first time, if I'm saying, hello, my leader, I'd like to work a 4-day week because I'm going to go off and run my own business 1 day a week, she's probably not going to be able to say yes to me in that exact moment. That's going to be a continuous conversation and we're going to need to keep coming back to it. And so I think just also not feeling like you need to ask for help and get all of the help all in one moment and put too much pressure on either yourself or actually on your employer. I think, you can make incremental gains and improvements over time. So I think if it's more formal, definitely preparing, but not putting yourself under this pressure to feel like all of that help has got to come all at once.
My least favourite was at the Christmas party when people would come up just as I was relaxing and ask me a loaded question, one after the other. And at that point, That was when I decided I was only ever going to dance at a party, because it helped me get out of that situation.
I mean, that's all good advice.
Wouldn't we love to go to a party and dance now? Anyway. Hannah, where do I get a mentor?
Oh, Hannah, that's a brilliant question, because mentors are amazing for your career development. So a mentor, just so we're all kind of on the same page with what they do for you, a mentor is somebody who shares their expertise, advice and wisdom with you. You kind of learn through their lived experience. They're kind of a shortcut to career knowledge. So they're hugely valuable. One of the biggest challenges people face when they would like to get a mentor is they go out and ask for a mentor, which can sound a bit strange, but they literally might send an email. So if I was saying to Edwina, if I emailed Edwina out of the blue and said, Edwina, I need a mentor, will you be my mentor? Edwina's probably looking at that email and thinking, well, I don't know you very well. I don't really know what it is that you want to learn from me, or why you've come to me specifically for it, and I don't even know how much time you're expecting. So there's a whole lot of unknowns there, and it becomes very easy for somebody to say no to that, or to give you no reply, because you haven't given them enough information. So in order to get a mentor, it's actually really important that we start with what is it that we want to learn before we even get to the who. Let's just pause and think, in my career, where I am right now, what is the thing that I would really like to learn a bit more about? And write that down, be really clear on it. And the next thing to do is say, well, who could I learn that from? And sometimes you might know the who. You might say, oh, actually, I know somebody who's I'm sort of connected to, who would have that insight or that knowledge or that wisdom. And sometimes you don't know who. And so you might go and have to ask somebody else, do you know anybody who? But you can be much more specific, rather than just saying, have you got a mentor that I could speak to? It's saying, actually, one of the things that I'd really like to learn about this year is how to get more confident presenting virtually. It's not something I've had to do before, and now it's become a really big part of my job. And then you can think, well, who can I see who does that well? Or is there somebody that my manager might know that they think does that well? And they can make a much more specific introduction. And with mentors, two types of mentors. You can have a mentor that's sort of the moment. You've got something that you need to know now. It might just be one conversation, and they share that advice, wisdom, expertise, and you thank them. And you maybe go back a month later and let them know how you put that insight into action. And that might be it. That's still a mentor. And sometimes we have really meaningful mentors, and those are relationships that evolve over time. They're people who learn about you and what you're doing and what you're good at, and they're sort of bought into you in your development. But if we start out saying, will you be my meaningful mentor, we might put too many people off. So better to start with what it is you'd like to learn, who can help you. And if you have that chemistry, if you have that understanding between both of you that you can maybe help each other, mentors get help from mentees as well, then that's how meaningful relationships, meaningful mentor relationships can evolve over time, naturally and organically.
Very good, very good. Right, I think maybe our last question. How can we overcome seeing asking for help as a weakness?
Well, I think it's a mindset point, isn't it? That we all need to, probably a gremlin that we all need to kind of cage for ourselves. And, you know, we interviewed someone called Simon Sinek, and everyone we interview, we say, what's your best piece of career advice? And he said for ages, he felt like when he became this expert, there was no way he could ask for help because that would diminish his expertise. And then he said what he really realized is, you know, no one has all the answers and you don't need to pretend that you do. And that I just found that kind of reassuring, like just remembering that no one is perfect, no one knows everything. And actually, if you can find an authentic way of asking for help that kind of works for you, kind of phrasing that, you know, in a, you know, very simple, kind of straightforward way, I promise you, everyone around you will have also asked for help. And that's, I think, how we squiggle our way to this kind of success that really matters for us, is finding those support systems of people who we can ask for help. We don't worry too much if kind of someone can't help us in that moment. We realize there's more than one person, and we build up those mentoring relationships that kind of Helen talked about. So I think it's a mindset point. Sometimes we just need to reframe sort of the stories that we tell ourselves. And I think sometimes we say, asking for help means I don't know enough. Asking for help is a weakness. We're saying these negative statements and sentences to ourselves. And I think we've got to turn those into kind of self-supporting statements, which is asking for help is a sign of strength. The people who have the most success in their career ask for help frequently. So let's turn those kind of positive, that kind of negative mindset, those kind of things that kind of the gremlins that might be getting in our way, and start saying these kind of positive self-supporting statements. And I think that's how we then kind of start to make really good progress and do all the things that you all have amazing potential to go away and do.
I love it. And asking for help is one of the female lead values. And one of the lessons that we've learned from our 60 iconic women. And, you know, you are so right. I have had my eyes open to the fact that they don't think they're perfect, even though we think they're amazing and wonderful. So, Sarah and Helen, thank you so much for that brilliant, very, very quick synopsis of what must be your life, career, work so far. And utterly brilliant. And the book is a wonderful read with lots of kind of how-to sections, which I really enjoyed. So thank you. Thank everybody who's been our audience today. Our next LinkedIn Live is on the 29th of October next week. And we're going to look at why emotional intelligence is the key to your success. And that's going to be from Nada Nasruddin. So she's the founder of Rise Up For You. So I hope you'll join us then. And until then, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you both and to share your knowledge.
Thanks so much, Edwina, and thank you
for watching. Thank you.